Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to check in CDS whether a declaration contains a prohibited or restricted item and how to configure IPS to check during scanning whether a prohibition or restriction applies to the item. It is important to note that IPS can be configured to retrieve the prohibition or restriction status of an item from CDS during scanning and when creating or closing a dispatch. For purposes of this video, however, we will only be showing how IPS retrieves the prohibition or restriction status of an item during scanning. First, what exactly is the difference between a prohibited and a restricted item? Prohibited items are forbidden items, meaning they are not allowed to be imported to a country or territory. These can include dangerous goods such as explosives, weapons, counterfeit materials, among others. Restricted items, on the other hand, are items that require special licenses or permits from the relevant government agencies before they are imported or allowed entry into a country or territory. Examples of restricted items are certain fruits and vegetables, animal products, or animal byproducts. The list of prohibited or restricted items varies from one country or territory to another. During scanning, for IPS to perform an API call to CDS to find out whether a prohibition or restriction exists for an item, we must first configure the settings for the relevant national and local parameters. Click National Management, National Parameters, Other tab. We are going to configure the settings for 4 parameters, namely the CDS security token for operational screens, the CDS security token for interfaces, the CDS URL for operational screens, and the CDS URL for interfaces. The CDS security token is generated from the CDS Manage Organization Preferences screen. This is the same token used for the operational screens and interfaces. For the CDS URL for operational screens and interfaces, this should be the URL of your local CDS installation in the format http://hostname/cds.api/cds.api-service.svc. Click Store. Next, in the Local Parameter tab, we need to enable the Check Prohibitions and Restrictions for the outbound scanning function by selecting the checkbox. When prompted, we must exit and restart IPS for the changes to take effect. Starting with CDS 2020 version, CDS warns the user if prohibitions or restrictions apply to an item. Depending on your CDS configuration, the prohibitions or restrictions are checked against the repository in your CDS instance or in cds.post. We will proceed with creating an outbound declaration in CDS from Switzerland to Singapore containing a prohibited item videotape. Let us start by clicking the Create Declaration for Outbound Item at Post. Enter or scan the item ID. If the item details have been entered in CDS Kiosk or the Electronic Advanced Declaration EAD app, you can click the Fill from Anonymous Declaration button for CDS to fill in the details for you. Refer to the previous video created on capturing a declaration in CDS Kiosk for more information. Let us fill in the general details first. Next, we fill in the details of the sender and the recipient. If the customer's details already exist in the database, CDS automatically makes the suggestion. You can select and modify some of the details as necessary. We enter the videotape and associate details. Notice that a prohibition or restriction icon appears next to the row where the prohibited or restricted item is. Click Store. CDS displays a detailed prompt about the restrictions or prohibitions that exist for the item. This pop-up reminds you of what you are about to agree to. Click Continue. Now we are going to scan the item in IPS. In IPS, we can actually decide whether we want CDS to return a detailed CDS prohibition or restriction warning using the Return Detailed Response for CDS Prohibitions national parameter. To show the difference, we will set this parameter first to false and then scan the prohibited item whose declaration we have created in CDS. As it is an outbound parcel, we are going to use the Receive Parcels at Outward Office of Exchange function. IPS shows a warning that the item is a prohibited or restricted item and prompts you whether to continue or to cancel. Just for illustration purposes, let us cancel the scanning and then change the setting of the Return Detailed Response for CDS Prohibitions national parameter to True. IPS at this time returns detailed information about the prohibited or restricted item. In addition, as previously mentioned, if you want IPS to check whether a prohibition or restriction applies to an item when creating or closing a dispatch, you can set the Check Prohibitions and Restrictions in CDS at CScan National parameter to True. We hope that you have learned something from this video. Thank you for watching.